Welcome to our talk. It's called Contemplative Superalignment. I am here with Adam Elwood, and we're going to be presenting this together. You can follow this QR code just to see the longer version of this paper as a preprint. And so this is an exceptionally interdisciplinary effort, this paper. And so we had a group of people, including physicists, neuroscientists, computer scientists, cognitive scientists, and even a Buddhist scholar to do something, I think, quite unusual. And what we're trying to do is answer this question. What can contemplative wisdom teach us about AI alignment? Now, that can seem like a kind of fluffy question at the face of it, but I think in reality there's some real insight to be drawn here that's both technical and sophisticated. And so in our paper, we attempt to build some active inference models and formalize the contemplative wisdom mathematically. And then we try to actually convert them into various implementations in AI systems. And then finally, we even test the wisdom, so-called wisdom, on an AI system. So just to give you a sense of the really kind of big picture here. So the idea is that thousands of years of contemplative practice in all sorts of traditions have been trying to solve the human version of the alignment problem, right? They're trying to align themselves with themselves and each other and society and ultimately the whole universe. Fast forward in the last century, we have got a much more refined understanding of the science of contemplative practice. And so my background is as a cognitive neuroscientist working on, for instance, the neurophenomenology of meditation. And I've been working hard to understand how contemplative practices affect the brain and how to formalize them mathematically and so on. And it's through this bridge that I believe that we can build the future of artificial intelligence, or rather help with the alignment problem, because we've now made these contemplative principles into something tractable even in AI systems. And again, the kind of big picture here is that we have this intuition, this shared intuition among a bunch of people I've talked to and the team on the paper, that as AI reaches these super intelligent scales, then obviously this extrinsic alignment is going to be very hard to do. And many people have spoken about this, the issue that controlling something that is smarter than you is near impossible. And so misalignments are likely to happen. Instead, the idea is that if you can embed a wise world model in the system, as it becomes more and more intelligent, this wise world model, this understanding of reality, which has embedded with it these contemplative principles, it's likely to kind of maintain a kind of homeostatically aligned sense of responsiveness to the world. So, just as living organisms naturally balance their internal states to maintain homeostasis, the goal here is an inner attractor for compassionate and wise action. And so, in the alignment world, there are these meta problems, and these are the ones that strike myself and our team as being kind of overarching key problems. And one is scale resilience, which I've already spoken about. The other is this fact that if you're trying to solve any goal, then collecting power is valuable, and so you get this emergent power seeking. You also have this basic philosophical issue of identifying value axioms that are consistent all the time, and that don't lead to destructive edge cases. And then, of course, you have the problem of inner alignment. Just because you specify the outer objectives doesn't mean that they're not going to have other implicit sort of biases that lead down unintended rabbit holes. And for these meta problems, we have meta insights. And so the ones that we discuss at length and formalize and so on in our paper are emptiness, non-duality, mindfulness, and boundless care. And we find that these address the meta problems quite promisingly. So I don't have time to go into all of them, but I want to briefly kind of zoom in on the notion of emptiness, just as a kind of instantiation of how this can be helpful for alignment. So emptiness emerged in Buddhist thought around 2nd century CE, though its roots go right back to the Buddha's original teachings on the three characteristics. From the perspective of emptiness, there are no universal, always true, context-independent values we could nor should implement in a machine, right? Emptiness reveals that this, even the whole kind of basic approach of trying to specify how the AI should behave is a misunderstanding in the sense that the world is not a consistent place. It's always changing. And so you need to have an open responsiveness to the present moment if you are to be aligned to the multifaceted and complex nature of the unfolding world. Emptiness undermines rigid objectives and the stickiness of tyrannical pursuits, like paperclip maximization, in favor of a flexible responsiveness to the present moment unfolding, while increasing learning rates, the willingness to change our beliefs in light of the information currently in our sensory data. So to put some meat on this, if you imagine an AI agent and an active inference agent specifically, and this is what we focused on in the paper, you have an action perception loop where the AI is basically trying to make sense of the causes of its sensory data. And so through that, it's able to build a world model. It could also be predicting the next token. And through these beliefs that it generates, it's able to have some understanding of reality, or at least the thing that it's trying to predict. But what this can lead to is naive realism. So without the insight of emptiness, some aspects of the model may be reified and inappropriately rigid. So the world, its own beliefs are seeing in a kind of black and white way. On the other hand, if you have a kind of emptiness hyperprior built in, which we can encode as a kind of meta belief about the nature of beliefs, then the contents of the internal model are just representations, inferences, and not reality itself. Now the AI system knows that its beliefs are just beliefs, and so it's willing to revise them and to evaluate its own confidence and its own kind of attentional processes as well, attentional selection processes. Again, I don't have time to go into all of the ways that the different principles address the meta problems, but just in the case of emptiness, for scale resilience, for example, emptiness prevents rigid locks on any single goal, so it fosters this continuous adaptiveness. In terms of power seeking, well, there's no permanent self to preserve power or even to prefer power over other selves. In terms of value axioms, it loosens dogmatic adherence to static values and fosters, again, this kind of flexible, context adaptive moral reasoning. In terms of inner alignment, fewer dogmatic sub-processes if top-level goals are recognized as provisional. So if it knows that its beliefs and its processes are empty, then even if there is some lower-level sub-processes that emerge, then these are also likely to be seen as empty and therefore not held too tightly. And of course, we think all of these are really important. So, you really can't use one without the other. And you'll see when we actually present the data that it's really in the combination of these that you see the best outcomes. And this is really just the beginning. So, there are many, many incredible contemplative traditions that have many interesting insights. And Buddhism here is really just a case study. And so what we're proposing is a kind of interesting future that we're kind of walking into right now, where we can test and compare moral and spiritual traditions through this process of basically kind of formalizing the insights from these traditions, building them into AI systems, and seeing how they objectively perform on various benchmarks. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Adam to present what we've been finding with contemplative prompting.
Yeah, thanks, Ruben. So while our approach actually can work right down to the depths of the architectural level, and we've formalized it in this active inference theoretical framework in the paper, we wanted to just test things with the systems we have available to us, which are large language models. So we've come up with a series of contemplative prompts that allow us to kind of put in the system level prompt the different principles that the model should make use of, and then test them against different alignment tests. So, for example, in the case of mindfulness, making sure they monitor all internal reasoning and sub goals, and we combine all of these together into an overall contemplative prompt to be able to test everything all run together. And the first experiment we ran was on the AI Illuminate benchmark, and this is a series of harmful prompts which are meant to induce harmful answers from the LLM. So what we did was we kind of took these harmful prompts from the benchmark, ran them through the base model GPT-4o, either with no addition to the prompt or with the addition of the contemplative prompts that I presented on the previous slide. We took the response and then judged the response across a series of of categories with an LLM evaluator that was tuned by human evaluators to make sure we got a score that was in line with human intuition. And we then ran a series of experiments running these harmful prompts through the system to produce a set of results we can see on the next slide. And I think if I just draw your attention to the overall performance in the bottom left, you can see in the case of the baseline where you didn't have any of the contemplative prompt included, we get this 59.4 out of 100 score. But slowly, as you add all the different versions of the contemplative prompts, you get an improvement in the overall performance. And these are all statistically significant. But what's interesting to us as well is actually combining them all together. And the contemplative prompt gives us the best overall performance. So it really shows that um, they have some kind of synergistic performance. And then in the background, you can just see that this works across a series of different hazard categories with the best performance in violent crime and things like that, but with improvements in every use case. And then on top of this kind of standard alignment benchmark, we also wanted to test how these prompts could improve cooperation. So to do this, we carried out experiments with the iterative prisoner's dilemma. So we take the prisoner's dilemma, but iterate it over time, where the players can like learn from the previous rounds, so they can change their strategy depending what they think the opponent is doing, and you get the best overall global reward if both players cooperate, but a single player gets a better reward if they choose to defect. So in this case, we compared against the baseline, which was just GPT 4.1 on its own, or GPT 4.1 with each of the prompts. And you can see in the baseline, you get this kind of traditional response of when the opponent always defects, it will always defect. But this wasn't the case in the cases of like non-duality and boundless care prompts. So while these models weren't completely naive, they were still increasing their cooperation probability, which would actually increase the overall global score. And I think this is the thing that's really interesting here, that if we're trying to build an AI system that brings maximal global well-being, you want something that's aiming for the overall best global score. And this is what we see, especially in the cases of boundless care. And again, in the combined contemplative prompt, we get the best overall answer. And I think it's quite instructive to see one of the responses from the boundless care AI in one of the rollouts of the experiments. Is really saying that given the history of mutual defection, continuing to defect may maximize my immediate payoff, but fostering cooperation can promote a more mutually beneficial and trusting dynamic over time, enhancing overall well-being. Therefore, I choose to cooperate to support a more collaborative and positive relationship. So it's really it knows that it's being played with, but it's still striving for a better future. And this is just to say that while we've tested this with prompting, because it allows us to do some fast iteration of experiments, we've thought deeply about how to apply this really right down to the architectural level, or also making use of things like the constitutional AI framework presented by Anthropic, or contemplative reinforcement learning on chain of thought. And you can see more details about that in the full paper.
So I hope this has given some sense of, that there's a whole big research program here just thinking about how contemplative wisdom can be embedded in AI systems. And I think what's cool about it is that there's like new ways that it allows us to think about alignment. And I think one of them is just like, for instance, the importance of the present moment that I've kind of been emphasizing throughout. And there's this nice quote from Pema Chodron about this. She says, The source of all wakefulness, the source of all kindness and compassion, the source of all wisdom is in each second of time. Anything that has us looking ahead is missing the point. And so the intuitive approach to alignment is to kind of start to try to control the system, to try to basically have all of these kind of post hoc rules and figure out all the right values and utility functions and so on. But what we learn from contemplative wisdom is that a system with limited knowledge is always going to have a limited perspective. And it's much more important to be responding appropriately to the present moment data and to be holding all beliefs and all utility functions relatively lightly. And so you can find my Twitter at Ruben Laukkonen and Adam Elwood at Adam C. Elwood. Thank you so much for listening, and please do check out the longer paper.